My husband slid the paper across the breakfast table like it was nothing. Just a simple document, Ruth. Bank stuff, Michael said, not even meeting my eyes. But his fingers tapped too fast. His smile felt rehearsed. I didn't pick up the pen. Instead, I took a sip of coffee and said, I thought we should have someone else look at it first. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door and stepped aside for my lawyer, Daniel Brooks, I swear Michael's face lost all its color. That's when I knew I hadn't been paranoid. I had been right. If you've ever trusted someone and later questioned everything, I'd really like to hear your story. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe if you believe in protecting yourself, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'm 61 years old, and for most of my life I believed I was careful. Careful with money, careful with people, careful with love. After my first husband passed away, I spent nearly 7 years alone. Not lonely, just quiet. I had my routines, my house in Colorado, my garden, my savings built slowly over decades. Nothing flashy, but everything secure. Then I met Michael Carter. He walked into my life like someone who understood silence. He didn't rush me. He didn't charm me with big gestures. He listened, really listened. I'm not here to change your life, Ruth, he told me on our third date. I just want to be part of it. That line stayed with me. We met at a community fundraising event. I remember he helped an elderly woman carry her chair before he even introduced himself to me. That kind of man, at least that's what I thought. We started slow. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into weekends together. There was no pressure, no games. At our age, you don't have time for that. He told me about his past. Divorced. One son grown living out of state. Some business experience. Nothing that raised red flags. And I told him about mine. I'm not looking to start over, I said once. Good, he replied, smiling softly. Neither am I. We married after a year. Looking back now, I wonder if that was too fast. But at the time, it felt right. We weren't young and impulsive. We were experienced. Or so I believed. The first 3 years of our marriage were peaceful. Michael was attentive in small ways. He made coffee before I woke up. He fixed things around the house without being asked. He never touched my finances without discussing it first. In fact, he often said things like, "You've built something solid here, Ruth. I respect that." And I believed him. Our life wasn't exciting, but it was steady, comfortable, safe. That's what I valued most. Then about 6 months ago, something shifted. Not all at once. Not in a way you could point to and say, there. That's when it started. It was gradual, subtle. The first time, it was just a comment over dinner. You ever think about simplifying things? He asked. What do you mean? I said. You know, less paperwork, less hassle. As we get older. I shrugged. I've already got most of that handled. He nodded, but there was something in his eyes, like he was testing the ground. A few days later, he brought it up again. We should probably look at your accounts sometime, he said casually. Make sure everything's easy to manage. My accounts are fine, I replied, trying to keep it light. Of course they are, he said quickly. I just mean we should probably look at your accounts sometime, he said casually. Make sure everything's easy to manage. My accounts are fine, I replied, trying to keep it light. Of course they are, he said quickly. I just mean together, as a team. That word. Together. It sounded right. It felt right. But something in me didn't settle. Over the next few weeks, the conversations became more frequent. Not aggressive, not pushy, just persistent. You know, if something ever happened, it would be easier if my name was on a few things. We could combine some accounts, cut down on fees. Estate planning is a nightmare if it's not organized early. Always reasonable, always logical. That was the problem. There was nothing obviously wrong with what he was saying, and yet I started to feel watched. Not in a physical way, more like observed, evaluated, like every answer I gave him was being measured. One evening, I asked him directly, "Why are you bringing this up so much?" He smiled, reached for my hand. "Because I care about you, Ruth. I don't want things to get complicated later." That should have reassured me. But instead, it made me uneasy, because Michael had never repeated himself like this before. He was patient, easygoing. This was different. I started noticing smaller things. He'd glance at my mail before handing it to me. He'd ask casual questions like, "That investment account still doing well?" Or, "Do you keep all your documents in the same place?" Individually, none of it meant much. Together, it started to form a pattern. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I told myself I was overthinking. That maybe this was just what people did at our age. Plan ahead, organize, prepare. But deep down, something was off. I could feel it. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion. It was the doubt, because this wasn't just a man I was dating. This was my husband, the man who made me coffee every morning, the man who held my hand at night, the man I had trusted with the quiet parts of my life. And now, I was starting to question him. I remember standing in the kitchen one afternoon, watching him through the window as he talked on the phone outside. His voice was low, controlled. He turned slightly away when he noticed me looking. That was new. Michael had never hidden things from me before. When he came back in, I asked, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just business stuff." Business. I didn't even know he still had active business dealings. That night, I lay awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing beside me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel completely safe. I didn't confront him. I didn't accuse him. I did something much quieter. I started paying attention, because if I was wrong, I'd let it go. But if I was right, then the man sleeping next to me wasn't who I thought he was, and I needed to know which one it was. It didn't happen overnight. That's what made it so hard to see clearly. If Michael had suddenly demanded access to everything, I would have shut it down immediately. I wasn't naive. I had managed my own finances for decades. I knew the difference between partnership and control. But he didn't demand. He suggested, gently, repeatedly. One evening, we were sitting on the couch watching television. Or at least I was pretending to watch. Michael muted the volume and turned toward me. "Ruth, can I ask you something?" I smiled. "You always do." He chuckled softly, but there was tension in his shoulders. "Why don't we combine our accounts?" There it was. Again. I kept my tone calm. "We've talked about this." "I know," he said quickly. "But hear me out." I didn't respond. I just looked at him. "It would make things easier," he continued. "Bills, taxes, everything. One place, one system." "I already have a system," I said. "Yes, but it's separate," he replied. "We're married. We shouldn't be operating like strangers." That word again. Strangers. I felt something tighten in my chest. "We're not strangers," I said quietly. "We just have different financial habits." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I'm not trying to take anything from you, Ruth." I didn't accuse him of that, but the fact that he said it anyway stayed with me. "Then why does it matter so much?" I asked. He hesitated, just for a second. "Because I want to build something together," he said. "Not just live side by side." It sounded right. It sounded like something a good husband would say, and yet something felt rehearsed. "I need to think about it," I said. His jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. "Of course. Take your time." But he didn't give me time. Over the next few weeks, it escalated. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would notice, but I noticed. He started bringing home documents, folders, Envelopes, papers he would set on the kitchen counter, then casually slide into his briefcase when I walked in. "What's all that?" I asked one morning. "Just some financial planning stuff," he said. "Nothing urgent. Nothing urgent." But he carried it everywhere. One afternoon, I walked into the living room earlier than expected. He was sitting at the table, papers spread out in front of him. When he saw me, he moved faster than I'd ever seen him move. He stacked the papers, flipped them over, and smiled. "Hey," he said too quickly. I stopped in the doorway. "What are you working on?" "Just organizing things," he replied. "Can I see?" There was a pause, a small one, but enough. "It's not finalized yet," he said. "I'll show you when it's ready." When it's ready. That didn't sit right. Because if it involved me, if it involved us, why wasn't I part of it from the beginning? That night, I called Helen. Helen Parker had been my friend for over 30 years. She was the kind of woman who didn't sugarcoat things. "Tell me everything," she said after I explained the situation. I hesitated. "Maybe I'm overreacting." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe you're not." I sighed. He keeps bringing up finances, combining accounts, adding his name to things. Helen didn't respond immediately. "Helen, I've heard this before," she said finally. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "A friend of mine," she continued. "Widowed, met a man later in life. He was charming, attentive, everything she needed." That sounded familiar. "They got married," Helen went on. "A year later, he started suggesting simplifications. Joint accounts. Shared ownership." I sat down slowly, and I asked. She signed some papers, Helen said. Didn't think much of it. Trusted him. I didn't like where this was going. "What happened?" "He transferred everything," Helen said flatly. "Legally, cleanly." By the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. I felt cold. "Are you saying Michael is—" "I'm saying be careful," Helen cut in. "Very careful." I stared at the wall in front of me. "This isn't the same," I said, but my voice wasn't as confident as I wanted it to be. "Maybe it isn't," Helen replied. "But the pattern, it's close enough to make you pause." I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying every conversation, every suggestion, every time he said together or simplify. The next morning, Michael was back to his usual self, making coffee, smiling. "Morning, Ruth," he said, like nothing had changed. I studied him. Really studied him. The man in front of me looked exactly the same, but something underneath didn't. "Morning," I replied. He handed me a cup. "I was thinking," he said casually, "we could sit down this weekend. Go over some paperwork. Nothing major." The man in front of me looked exactly the same, but something underneath didn't. "Morning," I replied. He handed me a cup. "I was thinking," he said casually, "we could sit down this weekend. Go over some paperwork. Nothing major." There it was again. Paperwork. "Maybe I said?" He nodded, satisfied. But I wasn't, because now I wasn't just noticing patterns. I was connecting them. And the more I connected, the less comfortable I felt. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out all my financial records, every account, every document, every detail. I went through them slowly, carefully. Not because I didn't trust myself, but because I was starting to realize I might not be able to trust him. And if that was true, then I wasn't just dealing with a misunderstanding. I was standing at the edge of something much bigger, something I couldn't afford to ignore. The next few days, I stopped reacting. That was intentional. Instead of pushing back, Instead of questioning Michael directly, I did something much quieter. I agreed. Not fully, not completely, just enough. Maybe you're right, I told him one morning as he poured coffee. We should make things simpler. I watched his face carefully. There it was. Relief. Not subtle, not small. Real. Really? He said, turning toward me. Yeah, I replied. But I want to understand everything first. Of course, he said quickly. That's all I want too. That was the first time I knew for sure. We were no longer having the same conversation. He thought he was moving me closer, but I was stepping back. That afternoon, I made a decision. If I was going to figure out what Michael was doing, I needed help. Professional help. I called Daniel Brooks. I hadn't spoken to Daniel in over 10 years, but he used to handle legal work for my late husband. Estate planning, property, trusts. He was meticulous, quiet, the kind of man who didn't miss details. Ruth Simmons, he said when he picked up. That's a name I haven't heard in a while. I smiled faintly. I wish I were calling under better circumstances. What's going on? I hesitated for a second. Then I told him everything. The conversations, the pressure, the documents, the way Michael avoided showing me anything until it was ready. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just listened. When I finished, there was a pause. Ruth, he said carefully, have you signed anything yet? No. Good. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. What do you think this is? I asked. I don't want to jump to conclusions, he said, but I've seen situations like this before. My grip tightened on the phone. Where one spouse gradually positions themselves to gain legal control over assets, he continued. It's often done slowly so it feels reasonable. That's exactly what this feels like, I whispered. Do you have access to the documents he's been preparing? No, I said. He won't show me until they're final. That's a problem, Daniel replied. I stood up, pacing slowly across the living room. So what do I do? There was a brief silence. Then he said something that changed everything. Let him bring you the papers. I stopped walking. What? Let him think you're agreeing, Daniel said. Don't confront him yet. My heart started beating faster. And when he does, Daniel continued, you call me, before you sign anything. I swallowed. You think it's that serious? I think, he said carefully, that if there's nothing wrong, reviewing the documents will confirm that. And if there is something wrong, his voice lowered slightly. Then you'll be very glad you didn't sign them alone. I exhaled slowly. Okay, I said. Okay. We ended the call, but his words stayed with me. Let him bring you the papers. That meant I had to play along, and that wasn't easy. Because every time Michael smiled at me, every time he spoke gently about our future, I had to pretend I believed him. That night, he brought it up again. I've been working on some documents, he said over dinner. Nothing complicated, just simplifying things. I nodded. I figured. He looked surprised. You did? Yeah, I said. You've been hinting at it for weeks. He laughed lightly. Guess I haven't been subtle. No, I thought. You haven't. So, he continued, maybe we can go over them soon? Sure, I said, whenever you're ready. There it was again, that flicker of relief. Great, he said. I just want us to be on the same page. Same page. I almost smiled at that, because I had a feeling we were about to be on very different pages. The next few days, I paid even closer attention, not just to what he said, but to what he did. He spent more time on his phone, more time outside taking calls. Once I walked past the study and heard him speaking in a low voice. "She's coming around," he said. I froze. There was a pause. Then he continued. "No, not yet. Soon." My stomach dropped. He wasn't talking to me. He wasn't talking about us. He was talking about me. I stepped away before he could see me. My hands were shaking. That night, I barely spoke. Michael noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired," I said. He nodded, but I could tell he was watching me, measuring, the same way I had started measuring him. Two people, living in the same house, pretending everything was normal. But underneath, everything had changed. 3 days later, he finally brought the papers. It was early morning. Breakfast was already on the table. Eggs, toast, coffee. Everything looked normal, except for the folder in his hand. He set it down in front of me. "This is it," he said, smiling. "Nothing complicated, just some paperwork to make things easier." My heart was pounding, but I kept my face calm. "Okay," I said. He slid the pen toward me. "Take your time," he added, but his eyes were fixed on my hands. Watching. Waiting. I opened the folder slowly. Pages, legal language, dense paragraphs. I didn't read them. Not really, because I already knew this wasn't something I should go through alone. I closed the folder gently. I think I said, looking up at him, we should have someone else take a look at this. His smile didn't disappear, but it changed, just slightly. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Just to be safe," I said. "A second opinion? It's standard stuff." "Ruth," he replied quickly. "Nothing to worry about." "I know," I said softly, "but it won't hurt." There was a pause, a long one. Then he leaned back in his chair. "If that's what you want," he said. But his voice, it wasn't as warm anymore. It wasn't as patient. Something underneath it had shifted. And in that moment, I realized something else. This wasn't just about paperwork anymore. This was about control. And I had just made it clear. He didn't have it. After that morning, everything became quieter. Not peaceful, just quieter. Michael stopped bringing up the paperwork directly. He didn't push. He didn't remind me. He didn't even mention the folder again. But that didn't mean he had let it go. It meant he was waiting, and I was too. The difference was I knew what I was waiting for. 2 days later, I called Daniel again. "He gave me the documents," I said. "Have you read them?" he asked. "Not properly," I admitted. I skimmed. "It's complicated. That's usually a sign it's not simple," he replied. I let out a small breath. I told him I wanted someone else to look at it. And how did he react? "He agreed," I said. But something changed. Daniel didn't respond right away. "Ruth," he said finally, "I want you to bring those papers to me. Don't sign anything. Don't discuss details with him yet." "Okay." "And one more thing," he added. "Yes, be careful how much you let him know you're questioning this." I paused. "You think he'll react badly?" "I think," Daniel said carefully, "that if someone is trying to gain control, they don't like losing it." That stayed with me. The next morning, I told Michael I had an appointment in town. "Running errands?" I said casually. He nodded. "Need me to come with you?" "No," I replied quickly. "It's just boring paperwork stuff." He smiled. "My favorite kind." I forced a small laugh. If only he knew. I took the folder with me. Driving to Daniel's office felt different than it used to. He had moved locations since the last time I saw him new building more modern. But when I stepped inside, everything about him was the same. calm, focused, sharp. "Ruth," he said, standing up to greet me. "Good to see you." "Not under these circumstances," I replied. He gestured for me to sit. "Let's take a look." I handed him the folder. For the next 20 minutes, he didn't speak. He just read, page after page, slowly, carefully. And the longer he stayed silent, the more my stomach tightened. Finally, he set the papers down. "Ruth," he said, his voice steady. "Did he explain any of this to you?" "Not in detail," I said. "He just called it simplifying things." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's not what this is." My chest tightened. "What is it?" He leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "This is a transfer of control." The room felt colder. Control of what I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Your assets," he said plainly. "Your accounts? Your property?" I stared at him. "But it's still in my name, right?" "Not if you sign this," he replied. My heart started pounding. "What happens if I do?" Daniel tapped one of the pages. "This section grants him joint authority over multiple financial accounts." I swallowed. "And this? That gives him power to make decisions on your behalf." I felt a wave of heat rush through me. "Like a power of attorney?" I asked. "Similar," he said, "but broader in some areas." I leaned back in my chair. "And this one?" I asked, pointing to another page. Daniel's expression darkened slightly. "That's the most concerning part." My voice dropped. "Why?" "Because it allows him to restructure ownership of certain assets without requiring additional consent later." I went still. "So I signed this once, and he can move things around legally." Daniel finished. Silence filled the room. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there staring at the papers in front of me, the same papers Michael had called simple. "Is this normal?" I asked finally. Daniel shook his head. "Not like this. Not without full transparency and mutual agreement." I let out a shaky breath. "So this isn't about convenience?" "No," he said firmly. "It's about control." The word hit harder this time, because now it wasn't just a feeling. It was confirmed. "What do I do?" I asked quietly. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You don't sign anything." "I figured that part," I said. He gave a small, understanding smile. "But you also don't confront him directly yet." I frowned. "Why not?" "Because right now," Daniel said, "he thinks you're unsure, maybe hesitant, and that's good. It gives you an advantage." I hadn't thought of it that way. "What kind of advantage?" I asked. "Information," he replied. "Time. Leverage." I nodded slowly. "So I keep pretending?" "Yes," he said, "for now." I looked down at the papers again. The neat lines, the legal language, the quiet precision of it all. It was calculated, carefully designed, not something put together casually. "How long do you think he's been planning this?" I asked. Daniel hesitated. "I can't say for sure," he replied. "But documents like this, they're not drafted overnight." A chill ran through me, which meant this wasn't new. This wasn't a recent idea. This had been building while he smiled at me, while he made me coffee, while he told me we were a team. I felt something shift inside me. Not fear. Not anymore. Something colder, clearer. Resolve. "I want to protect myself," I said. Daniel nodded. "That's exactly what we're going to do." He began outlining steps. "First, we review all your current accounts. Make sure nothing has already been altered. Okay. Second, we ensure your existing legal protections are updated. Like what your will, your asset structures, any permissions currently in place? I listened carefully, taking it all in. And third, he said, we prepare for the conversation. I looked up. What conversation? The one where he realizes, Daniel said calmly. You're not signing those papers? My stomach tightened again. Because that conversation wasn't going to be simple. I gathered the documents, sliding them back into the folder. As I stood to leave, Daniel added one more thing. Ruth. I turned back. Yes. You trusted him, he said. There's nothing wrong with that. I gave a small, tired smile. But now you verify, he continued. That's the difference. I nodded, and as I walked out of that office, one truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't poor communication. This was deliberate, and whatever Michael had planned, he wasn't going to expect what came next. I didn't confront him that night, or the next, or even the day after that. Instead, I watched. And once you start watching someone closely, you can't unsee things. Michael became more careful. Not less active, just more careful. His phone never left his side anymore. Not even when he went to the kitchen. Not even when he stepped outside to take calls. That alone told me everything. Because before all of this, he used to leave it anywhere. Coffee table, kitchen counter, bedroom dresser. Now always in his hand or his pocket. One evening, I tested something. Can you grab my glasses from the bedroom? I asked casually. Sure, he said, standing up. His phone was on the table. For a second, he hesitated. Then he picked it up and slipped it into his pocket before walking away. That was all I needed to see. Later that night, I called Daniel again. He's hiding something, I said. That's not surprising, Daniel replied calmly. I want to know what, I said. There was a pause. How far are you willing to go to find out, he asked. I didn't answer right away, because that question mattered. A lot. I don't want to do anything illegal, I said finally. Good, he replied. Then we don't. So what can I do? Observe, he said. Document. Pay attention to patterns. I frowned slightly. That's it. For now, he said, we don't need proof of everything. We just need enough to understand his intent. I leaned back in my chair. And what if I already understand it? Then we confirm it, he said, carefully. The next morning, I started writing things down. Times, conversations, moments that didn't feel right. At first, it felt excessive, but by the end of the second day, a pattern started to form. He made calls at the same times. Early afternoon, late evening, always outside, always in a low voice, and always after he thought I wasn't paying attention. On the third day, I got closer than I had before. He was in the backyard. I was inside near the kitchen window, close enough to hear. No, she hasn't signed yet, he said. My chest tightened. Pause. I told you I'm working on it. Another pause. Then his voice dropped lower. No, she trusts me. That's not the issue. That sentence hit me harder than anything else, because it was true, or at least it had been. I stepped back before he could notice me. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was anger, controlled, quiet, but growing. That night, I decided to take the next step. I invited him to breakfast. Not at home, somewhere public, neutral. Just the two of us, I said. It's been a while, he smiled. I'd like that. Tomorrow morning, I asked. Perfect. He had no idea. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I needed to prepare. I got dressed carefully, simple, calm, nothing out of the ordinary. I didn't want him to suspect anything. But there was one difference, a small one. I made a call before we left. "Daniel," I said when he answered. "I'm ready." There was no hesitation in his voice. "I'll meet you there." The restaurant was quiet when we arrived. Soft music, warm lighting, the kind of place people go when they want to talk or avoid talking. We sat across from each other. Michael looked relaxed, comfortable, confident. "You seem in a good mood," he said. "I am," I replied, and that part was true. Because for the first time since all of this started, I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was in control. The waitress came. We ordered. Small talk followed. Weather, food, nothing important. But underneath it, everything was important. Michael leaned forward slightly. "So," he said, "have you thought more about the paperwork?" Of course, he would bring it up. Of course. "I have," I said calmly. And he asked. I smiled. "I think it's a good idea." His face lit up. Not just happiness, relief, victory. "I'm glad you see it that way," he said. "I do," I continued. "But I want to go over everything carefully." "Of course," he said again. "We can review it together." I shook my head gently. "Actually, I said I thought we could review it with someone else." There it was. The shift. Subtle, but real. "Someone else," he repeated. "Just to be safe," I said. "You understand?" He leaned back slightly. "I told you, Ruth. It's standard. I know." I interrupted softly. "But I'd feel better." Silence. A long one. Then he nodded. "All right," he said, "if that's what you need." But his tone had changed. Again. Just like before. And then, right on time, Daniel walked in. I saw him before Michael did, calm, professional, carrying a slim leather folder. He approached the table. "Ruth," he said warmly, "good to see you." Michael turned. His expression froze. Just for a second. But that second was everything. "This is Daniel Brooks," I said, my voice steady. "My lawyer." The word hung in the air. Lawyer. Michael's smile didn't disappear. But it wasn't the same anymore. Not even close. "A lawyer," he said lightly. "That seems a bit much for simple paperwork." Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down. "Simple paperwork," he said calmly, "is usually the kind that benefits from clarity." Michael's eyes flicked between us, calculating, adjusting, adapting. I could see it happening in real time. And for the first time, he wasn't ahead of me. He was catching up, slowly, carefully, trying to regain control. But it was already too late, because now he wasn't just dealing with me. He was dealing with the truth. And the truth was about to be said out loud. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Not me. Not McKay, Luns. No one spoke. Not me. Not Michael. Not even Daniel. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just sit in the air. It presses down on you. Michael recovered first. Of course he did. He always did. "Well," he said, forcing a light chuckle, "this is unexpected." Daniel didn't smile. "Not really," he replied calmly, "given the nature of the documents." Michael's eyes sharpened. "What exactly do you mean by that?" I watched him carefully. There it was again. That shift. The polite mask slipping just a little. Daniel placed his folder on the table, opening it slowly. "I've reviewed the documents you prepared for Mrs. Simmons," he said. Michael leaned back slightly. And they're not what you described them to be." The words landed clean, direct. No hesitation. Michael's smile tightened. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said. "They're standard?" "They are not standard," Daniel interrupted, still calm, still controlled, but firm. Michael's gaze flicked to me, then back to Daniel. "What exactly is your concern?" he asked. Daniel tapped one of the pages. "This document grants you joint control over multiple financial accounts." Michael didn't respond immediately. "That's normal for married couples," he said finally. Daniel nodded slightly. "It can be, when both parties fully understand and agree to it." I felt Michael's attention shift back to me again. "And she does," he said. I met his gaze. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't." That landed harder than anything Daniel had said, because it wasn't legal language, it was personal. Michael's jaw tightened. "Ruth," I explained. "No," I interrupted, my voice steady. "You didn't." Another silence. He exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said. "Then let's explain it now." That was his strategy. Control the conversation. Reframe the situation. Make it seem reasonable. Normal. Daniel didn't let him. "There's more," he said. Michael looked at him. "Go on." "This section," Daniel continued, pointing, "again, allows you to make financial decisions on her behalf." Michael shrugged slightly. "That's just in case something happens, including situations where she is fully capable of making her own decisions?" Daniel asked. Michael hesitated. "Just for a second. It's precautionary," he said. Daniel didn't respond to that. He turned another page. "And this, including situations where she is fully capable of making her own decisions?" Daniel asked. Michael hesitated. "Just for a second. It's precautionary," he said. Daniel didn't respond to that. He turned another page. "And this," he said, "is the most concerning part." I felt my chest tighten again, even though I already knew. "Concerning how?" Michael asked. Daniel's voice didn't change. "It allows you to restructure ownership of assets without requiring additional consent." The words hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. Michael didn't answer immediately. And that was new. Because Michael always had an answer. Always. Until now. "That's not how it works," he said finally. Daniel didn't argue. He simply slid the document across the table. "Then explain this clause." Michael looked down. "Read it." And for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't have control of the moment. Not fully. His confidence cracked. Just slightly. But enough. I leaned forward. "Why didn't you tell me about that?" I asked. He looked up. "Because it's being taken out of context." "Then give me the context," I said. My voice was calm. But inside, everything was burning. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "It's just legal wording," he said. "It doesn't mean I would actually do it." I finished. He didn't answer, and that was the answer. I felt something settle inside me, a kind of clarity, cold, sharp, final. "This wasn't about simplifying anything," I said. "Ruth?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "Don't." He stopped, not because he wanted to, but because he realized he couldn't steer this anymore. Daniel spoke again. "Mr. Carter," he said, his tone professional. If your intention was transparency, these documents should have been explained in detail before being presented for signature. Michael looked at him. And if it wasn't? He asked. There it was. Not denial, not fully, just a question, a challenge. Daniel didn't flinch. Then it raises serious concerns about intent. The word intent echoed in my mind, because that's what this was about. Not paperwork, not convenience, intent. I turned to Michael. Who were you talking to? I asked. His expression shifted. What I heard you, I said, in the backyard, on the phone. Silence. You said I hadn't signed, yet I continued. You said you were working on it. His face hardened. That's not what... Don't lie to me, I said quietly. And that was it, the moment everything broke. Because until now, he had been balancing, playing both sides. But now there was no balance left, just truth. Or whatever version of it he was willing to admit. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and for a moment he looked tired. Not angry, not defensive, just tired. You weren't supposed to hear that, he said. The honesty of it caught me off guard. Then what was I supposed to hear? I asked. He didn't answer right away, and in that silence, I realized something else. This wasn't just about me. There was someone else involved. Someone on the other end of those calls. Someone waiting. Someone expecting something. Who is it? I asked. Michael looked at me, then at Daniel, then back at me, and for the first time, I saw something I had never seen before. Not confidence, not control. Fear. Real fear. And that's when I knew. The truth wasn't just bad. It was worse than I had imagined. I didn't expect him to answer. Not right away. Not in front of Daniel. But I also didn't expect what came next. Michael didn't deny it. He didn't deflect. He didn't even try to change the subject. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together, his voice lower than before. You really want to do this here? He asked. I held his gaze. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. Then he nodded slowly. All right, he said. Daniel remained still beside me, watching, saying nothing. Michael exhaled through his nose. It's not what you think, he began. That sentence again. Always that sentence. I didn't react. I just waited. It's complicated, he continued. Then simplify it, I said. My voice didn't rise, didn't shake, just steady, clear. He glanced at Daniel again, then back to me. There are investments, he said carefully. Opportunities. What kind of opportunities? I asked. Real estate, he replied. Business partnerships? I frowned slightly. With who? He hesitated, and that hesitation, that was everything. Michael, I said quietly. He looked at me. You're out of time. His jaw tightened again. Then he leaned back as if accepting something. Her name is Angela, he said. The name dropped into the space between us. Cold, sharp, final. Angela, who I asked. Angela Pierce, he replied. I repeated it in my head. Angela Pierce, a name I had never heard before. And what is she to you? I asked. He didn't answer immediately, which told me more than anything he could say. A business partner, he said finally. Daniel shifted slightly beside me, but didn't interrupt. And the calls I pressed, about the investments, he said, and the paperwork I asked. That was to streamline things, he replied. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so thin, so fragile. You expect me to believe that I asked. He met my eyes. I expect you to trust me. There it was. Again. Trust. The same word he had used before. The same word he had used to push me towards signing something I didn't understand. Something that would have given him control. Something he had been discussing with someone else. I leaned back in my chair. No, I said. His expression shifted. What do you mean, no? I said calmly, I don't trust you. The words felt heavier than I expected. Not because they were hard to say, but because they were true. Fully. Completely. And there was no going back from them. Michael stared at me, as if trying to decide whether I was serious, as if hoping I wasn't. You're overreacting, he said finally. Daniel spoke before I could. Given the circumstances, I would say she's reacting appropriately. Michael ignored him. This isn't what it looks like, he insisted. Then, what does it look like? I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I'm trying to grow what we have, he said, make things better. By taking control of everything I asked. That's not what I'm doing, he snapped. The sharpness in his voice cut through the room. People at nearby tables glanced over briefly. He lowered his tone immediately. But the damage was done. Because that was real. That wasn't the calm, controlled Michael. That was the version of him that slipped through when things didn't go his way. I didn't want to burden you with details, he said more softly. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. You didn't want me to question you. His eyes flashed. That's not fair. Fair, I repeated. You asked me to sign something that would give you control over my life. It's our life, he corrected. No, I said quietly. Not like that. Another silence. He looked at Daniel again. This is what you do, right? He said. You come in and create doubt. Daniel didn't react. My job, he said calmly, is to ensure my client understands what she's being asked to sign. He looked at Daniel again. This is what you do, right? He said. You come in and create doubt. Daniel didn't react. My job, he said calmly, is to ensure my client understands what she's being asked to sign. Michael laughed once, short, dry. And now she doesn't trust her own husband. I felt something settle deeper inside me. Not anger, not anymore. Something stronger. Clarity. I don't trust you because of what you did, I said. Not loud, not emotional, just certain. He stared at me again. And this time, he didn't argue. Because he knew. There was nothing left to argue. The truth was already sitting between us. Unavoidable. So what now, he asked finally. That question surprised me, because for the first time, he wasn't trying to lead. He was asking, and that meant something had shifted, something real. I took a breath. Slow, steady. Now, I said, you tell me everything. He didn't respond. Everything, I repeated. About Angela, I continued. About the investments. About why you needed those papers signed so badly. Daniel remained silent beside me, but I could feel his presence. Steady, supportive. Michael looked down at the table, at his hands, then back up at me, and for a moment I saw something different again. Not fear this time. Not exactly. Something closer to calculation. Like he was deciding how much to say, how much to hold back, how much he could still control. And that's when I realized something important. This wasn't over. Not even close, because whatever he was about to say was only part of the truth, and the rest was still hidden, waiting. Michael didn't speak right away, and this time I didn't rush him, because I could see it, the gears turning, the calculations. He was deciding which version of the truth to give me, and that alone told me something I didn't want to admit. There wasn't just one truth.
There were layers. I didn't tell you everything,
He said finally. That was the closest thing to honesty he had offered so far. Daniel shifted slightly beside me but stayed silent. I kept my eyes on Michael. Start talking, I said. He nodded slowly. Angela isn't just a business partner, he admitted. My chest tightened again. Then what is she? I asked. He hesitated. Then she's the one who introduced the opportunity. Not what I asked, but not a lie either. I leaned forward slightly. And why does she care whether I sign those papers? I asked. That question hit him harder. I saw it, in the way his shoulders tensed, in the way his fingers pressed against each other. Because now, we were getting closer. She's involved in the deal, he said. What deal? I asked. A development project, he replied. Commercial properties. And my signature, I pressed. Why does she need that? Silence. Again. But this silence felt different. He wasn't stalling. He was cornered. Daniel finally spoke. Because the assets being leveraged aren't solely his, he said. Michael shot him a look, but didn't deny it. I felt the pieces start to fall into place. Slowly. Coldly. You needed my assets, I said. Michael didn't answer. You needed access, I continued. Still no answer. That's what the paperwork was for. He exhaled. Long, heavy. Yes, he said. Just one word. But it changed everything. Because now we were no longer guessing. We were confirming. And Angela, I asked again. What does she get out of this? Michael rubbed his temple briefly. Funding, he said. Connections. That doesn't answer my question, I said. He looked at me, then away, then back again. She gets a percentage, he admitted. Of course she did. There was always a percentage, always a benefit, always a reason. And you? I asked. What do you get? He gave a small, humorless smile. A lot, he said. That honesty was almost insulting, because he said it like it was obvious, like I should understand, like I should accept it. At my expense, I said. It's not like that, he replied quickly. It is exactly like that, I said. My voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to, because the truth was already clear. He leaned forward again. You wouldn't lose anything, he insisted. I stared at him. You don't know that, I said. It's a calculated risk. It's my risk, I interrupted. Silence. Again. But this time, it belonged to me. Because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was stating facts, and he couldn't argue with them. Daniel closed the folder slowly. That's the core issue, he said. Risk without informed consent. Michael shook his head. You're making it sound worse than it is. No, Daniel replied. I'm making it sound exactly like it is. Michael turned back to me. Ruth, listen to me, he said, his voice softer now. This could change everything for us. That word again. Us. As if we were still standing on the same side. As if he hadn't already stepped away from that. You already tried to change everything I said. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said slowly, You were willing to do this without me fully understanding it. That's not true. It is, I cut in. You said yourself. You didn't tell me everything. He fell silent because he couldn't deny his own words. And the calls. I continued. The pressure. She hasn't signed yet. His jaw tightened again. That was just... Stop, I said. He stopped. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Because there was no version of this where he looked right anymore. I took a breath, and then I asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind since the moment he said her name. Are you involved with her? I asked. The words felt heavier than anything else. Not because I didn't expect the possibility, but because saying it out loud made it real. Michael didn't answer immediately, and that delay, that hesitation, that was louder than anything he could say. No, he said finally. Too fast, too sharp, too defensive. I held his gaze. Look at me, I said. He hesitated, then he did. Say it again, I said. There was a long pause, and in that pause, I saw it. The flicker, the doubt, the calculation. No, he said again. But this time, it didn't land the same. Because now, I was watching for it, listening for it. And it wasn't there. The certainty, the truth. Daniel didn't speak. He didn't need to, because I already knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. This isn't just business, I said quietly. Michael shook his head. You're reaching. No, I said. I'm finally seeing. Another silence, but this one was different, because it wasn't about what he would say next. It was about what I would do next. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't unsure. I wasn't confused. I wasn't waiting for answers. I was making a decision. I'm not signing anything I said. Clear, final. Michael stared at me. You're making a mistake, he said. Maybe, I replied. But it's my mistake to make. His expression hardened again. Not fear, not hesitation, something colder, something sharper. Then don't expect me to clean it up later, he said. That sentence, that tone, it revealed something else, something deeper. This wasn't just about opportunity. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. And now that he was losing it, he was showing me exactly who he was. His words didn't just sit in the air. They lingered, cold, sharp. You're making a mistake. That's what he said. Not I'm sorry. Not let's fix this. A mistake. As if I were the problem. As if everything that just happened didn't matter. I studied his face. Really studied it. And for the first time in years, I realized something terrifying. I didn't recognize this man. Not completely. Not anymore. I think I've already made one, I said quietly. He frowned. What are you talking about? I held his gaze. Trusting you. That hit. I saw it land. Not as guilt, but as irritation. Like I had crossed a line. Like I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. Ruth, he said, lowering his voice. You're letting this spiral. No, I replied. I'm finally stopping it. Daniel stood slowly. Not interrupting, not pushing, just present. I think we should conclude this discussion for now, he said calmly. Michael didn't look at him. His eyes stayed locked on me.
You walk out of here.
He said, and things change. I almost smiled. Things already changed, I said, and I meant it. Because something inside me had shifted. Not just my trust, not just my anger, my position. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was deciding. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, and that small movement seemed to hit him harder than anything I had said. Sit down, he said, not loudly, but firmly, commanding, that tone again, the one I had ignored for years, the one I had softened in my own mind, the one I had excused.
I didn't sit. I'm done here,
I said. He stood up too. Quickly this time.
This isn't over,
he said. No, I agreed. It's just clearer now. Daniel gathered the documents, calm, efficient, as if he had seen this moment before.
Many times.
Michael's voice dropped lower.
You think he's going to protect you?
He asked, nodding toward Daniel. I didn't even look at Daniel. I think I'm going to protect myself, I said. That was the difference. That was the shift. For years, I had trusted someone else to lead, to decide, to handle things. Now I wasn't, and he could feel it.
You're blowing this out of proportion,
he said. No, I replied. I'm finally seeing the proportion. That shut him up. For a second, just long enough for me to turn away. Just long enough for me to take a step. But then,
you don't understand what you're walking away from,
he said. I stopped. Not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted to hear it. What am I walking away from? I asked. He stepped closer, lowered his voice.
Security, he said. Opportunity. Everything we've built.
I turned back to face him.
Everything we built, I repeated.
He nodded.
Yes.
I shook my head slowly. No, I said. Everything I built, too. His expression shifted. And there it was again. That subtle crack. Because that part mattered. This wasn't just his success, his investments, his plans. I had been part of it. Every step, every sacrifice, every quiet decision to support instead of question. And now he was acting like it was his alone. You wouldn't even have those assets without me, I said. The words came out sharper than I expected, but they were true, and he knew it. That's not fair, he said. Neither is what you tried to do, I replied. Silence. Again. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt final. Daniel stepped slightly closer to me, not touching, just there, a steady presence.
Mrs. Simmons,
he said gently,
we should go.
I nodded, but before I turned, I looked at Michael one last time. Really looked. Not as my husband, not as the man I had built a life with, but as the man standing in front of me now. And I saw it, clearer than ever. Ambition, control, and something else. Something colder. Something that didn't care about me as much as it cared about winning. I hope it was worth it, I said. He didn't respond, because he didn't know yet. None of us did. I turned, and this time, I didn't stop. We walked out of the restaurant together. The morning air hit my face. Cool, sharp, real. I took a breath. Deeper than any breath I'd taken all morning. And for a moment, I just stood there, trying to process everything. trying to understand what came next. Daniel spoke first. "You handled that well," he said. I let out a small, tired laugh. "Did I?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes." I looked at him. "And now?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "Now we prepare." That word settled into me. Prepare. Not react, not panic. Prepare for what I asked. He met my eyes. For whatever comes next. And something in the way he said it made me realize something I hadn't fully accepted yet. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because men like Michael didn't just walk away. They adjusted. They strategized. They pushed back. And whatever this was, whatever he had been planning, whatever Angela was involved in, it wasn't just going to disappear because I said no. "Then we need to move fast," I said. Daniel gave a small nod. "I agree." I looked back once, through the glass window. Michael was still standing there, watching. Not angry, not panicked, just thinking. And that was worse, because it meant he wasn't done, not by a long shot. The ride home felt longer than it should have, not because of traffic, not because of distance, but because my mind wouldn't stop. Every word, every pause, every look Michael gave me, it replayed over and over again. Like my brain was trying to solve something that didn't want to be solved. "You're quiet," Daniel said. I let out a slow breath. "I'm thinking," I replied. "That's good," he said. "Just don't overthink the wrong parts." I glanced at him. "What are the wrong parts?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. "The emotional ones," he said finally. "They matter, but they can cloud judgment." I looked out the window. The streets blurred past, familiar, normal, completely disconnected from what my life suddenly felt like. "And the right parts?" I asked. "The facts," he said. "The paper trail, the legal exposure." That word again. Exposure. It made everything sound bigger, more serious. Because it was. We pulled up outside my house. Our house. I stared at it for a moment. Same driveway, same front porch, same door I had walked through thousands of times, and yet it didn't feel the same. "You want me to come in?" Daniel asked. I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. He nodded. "Call me if anything changes." "I will." I stepped out of the car, closed the door, and stood for a second. Just breathing. "Just you want me to come in?" Daniel asked. I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. He nodded. "Call me if anything changes." "I will." I stepped out of the car, closed the door, and stood there for a second. Just breathing. Just preparing. Because stepping inside that house meant stepping back into something I no longer understood. I unlocked the door, walked in. Silence. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful. It felt watchful. I set my bag down slowly, looked around. Nothing looked out of place. But that didn't mean anything anymore. Because now I knew. Things could be wrong without looking wrong. I walked into the kitchen, ran my fingers lightly across the counter, grounding myself, trying to steady the noise in my head. Then I heard it. A vibration. Soft. Short. Coming from the living room. I turned, walked toward it slowly, and there it was. Michael's phone, sitting on the coffee table. He must have left it in a rush, or maybe he didn't think he needed it. The screen lit up again. Another message. I stopped a few feet away, staring at it, not touching it, not yet. Because this was a line, and I knew it. I had never gone through his phone before, never needed to, never wanted to. But now everything felt different, because trust wasn't there anymore. And without trust, what rules was I still following? The phone buzzed again. This time, the name flashed clearly. Angela. My chest tightened. Of course it was her. Of course. I stepped closer, slowly, like the phone might disappear if I moved too fast. The screen dimmed, then lit again. Another message. I could see part of it. She still hasn't signed. The same tone, the same pressure, the same urgency. But this time, it wasn't hidden. It was right in front of me. Real. I picked up the phone. My hand hesitated for a second. Just 1 second. Then I unlocked it. The passcode hadn't changed. That almost made me laugh, because it meant one of two things. Either he thought I would never check, or he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. Both were dangerous. The messages opened instantly. Angela Pierce. Thread after thread. My heart started beating faster. Not from fear, from confirmation. Because now there was no guessing, only seeing. We need this done before Friday. You said she trusts you. Don't let her start asking questions. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Each message chipped away at something I hadn't even realized I was still holding on to. Hope. Once the transfer is complete, it'll be irreversible. I froze. Irreversible. That word hit differently, harder, because it wasn't just about risk anymore. It was about permanence. You promised this wouldn't get complicated. Handle your wife. I stopped scrolling. My fingers tightened around the phone. Handle your wife. That's how she saw me. Not a person, not a partner, a problem. Something to be managed, something to be controlled. I swallowed slowly, then kept reading. After this, we don't have to keep hiding. That line didn't belong to business. That line belonged to something else. Something I had already suspected. But now it wasn't just suspicion. It was there, clear, unmistakable. I felt the room shift slightly. Or maybe it was just me. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The late calls, the secrecy, the pressure, the urgency. It wasn't just money. It wasn't just ambition. It was deeper, messier, more personal. I locked the phone, set it back exactly where I found it. Careful, precise. Because now, this wasn't just about reacting. This was about strategy. Daniel was right. We needed to prepare. And now, I had something real, something concrete, something that changed everything. I took a deep breath, then another. And then I reached for my own phone. I didn't hesitate this time. I called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring. Ruth, he said. I need you to come back, I said. My voice was steady, too steady. What happened? And then I reached for my own phone. I didn't hesitate this time. I called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring. Ruth, he said. I need you to come back, I said. My voice was steady, too steady. What happened? He asked. I looked at Michael's phone one more time, then away. I found something, I said. A pause. Then I'm on my way. I ended the call. And as I stood there, In the middle of my own living room, I realized something else. This wasn't just about stopping him anymore. This was about exposing everything, because whatever he thought he was building, whatever he thought he could control, it was already starting to fall apart. And this time, this wasn't just about stopping him anymore. This was about exposing everything. Because whatever he thought he was building, whatever he thought he could control, it was already starting to fall apart. And this time was ready. Daniel arrived in less than 20 minutes. Faster than I expected. Faster than anyone who wasn't already worried would move. I was still standing in the living room when he walked in. Same spot, same silence, same tension hanging in the air. He didn't waste time. "What did you find?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I picked up Michael's phone again, unlocked it, opened the messages, then I handed it to him. "Read," I said. He took the phone. His expression stayed neutral at first. Professional, controlled. But as he scrolled, that changed. Subtle. But I saw it. His jaw tightened. His eyes slowed on certain lines. Irreversible. "Handle your wife. We don't have to keep hiding." He exhaled quietly, then handed the phone back to me. "That's significant," he said. Significant. That word felt too small. "This isn't just business," I said. "No," he agreed. "It's not." Silence. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was heavy with meaning. "What does it mean legally?" I asked. Daniel didn't rush his answer. He walked a few steps, thinking, organizing. Then he turned back to me. "It means intent," he said. My stomach tightened. "Intent to do what?" I asked. "To move assets without full disclosure," he said, "possibly under false pretenses." I nodded slowly, even though I already understood. I needed to hear it, out loud, real. "And the irreversible part?" I asked. "That suggests once the transfer happens, it can't be undone easily," he said. "Easily. Not impossible, but hard enough to matter, hard enough to trap me." "And the messages about me?" I asked quietly. Daniel held my gaze. "That's coercion language," he said. I swallowed, because hearing it framed that way made everything feel colder, more calculated. Not just a mistake, not just bad judgment. A plan, a deliberate plan. So judgment, a plan, a deliberate plan. "So what do we do?" I asked. Daniel stepped closer, lowered his voice slightly. "We protect you first," he said. I nodded, and then I asked, "Then we decide how aggressive you want to be." "What do we do?" I asked. Daniel stepped closer, lowered his voice slightly. "We protect you first," he said. I nodded, and then, I asked, "Then we decide how aggressive you want to be." Aggressive. That word lingered, because until now I had been reacting, defending, but aggressive. That meant something else. That meant going on offense. "I want the truth," I said. Daniel gave a small nod. Then we start documenting everything he said. I looked down at the phone in my hand. Every message, every word, every piece of proof. "This stays with me," I said. "Yes," he agreed. "But we make copies." I nodded again. Because now I wasn't just emotional. I was focused, clear, and for the first time, prepared. Should I confront him? I asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. No, that surprised me. Why not? I asked. Because right now, he said he doesn't know you've seen this. I froze slightly. That was true. Michael didn't know, and that was power. Once he knows, Daniel continued, he'll adjust. He'll delete, deny, reframe. I nodded slowly. He was right. Of course he was right. So we stay ahead, I said. Yes. Silence again. But this time, it felt controlled, strategic. What about Angela? I asked. Daniel's expression sharpened slightly. She's central, he said. How? I asked. She's pushing the timeline, he said. She's coordinating. She benefits financially and possibly personally. Personally. That word still hit, even though I already knew, even though I had seen it. Can we prove that? I asked. Maybe, he said, but we don't need to yet. I frowned slightly. Why not? Because right now, he said the financial angle is stronger. That made sense. Emotion mattered to me. But in this situation, facts mattered more. And the documents he wanted me to sign? I asked. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. We need to review those again, he said. They're still in your folder, I said. I know, he replied. But now we read them differently. That sentence changed something. Because before, those papers were confusing. Now they were suspicious, dangerous. I walked to the dining table, pulled out the chair, sat down. Daniel opened his folder, laid the documents out carefully, line by line, page by page. We went through them again, slower this time, more precise, and suddenly things started to stand out. Clauses that felt too broad, language that felt too vague, terms that gave control without clearly stating it. This section, Daniel said, pointing. This allows asset reallocation under joint consent, but it doesn't define what counts as consent. My chest tightened. So my signature, I said. Could be interpreted very broadly, he finished. I leaned back slightly, trying to process. And here he continued flipping a page. This clause transfers authority temporarily, but there's no clear expiration. Temporary, without an end. That wasn't temporary. That was control. That's intentional, I said quietly. Yes, Daniel replied. No hesitation, no doubt. Intentional. That word again. Everything kept coming back to that. Nothing here was accidental. Nothing here was careless. This was designed. Carefully. Quietly. And if I had signed it, I might not have realized what I had given away until it was too late. I felt a wave of something rise in my chest. Not panic, not fear, something sharper, anger, but controlled, focused, useful. He thought I wouldn't read it, I said. Daniel looked at me. He thought you trusted him, he said. That hit harder, because it was true. He had counted on that, relied on it, used it. I exhaled slowly, then leaned forward again. So now what I asked. Daniel closed the folder. Carefully. We build our position, he said. And then I asked. Then he said we decide when to make our move. I looked at him. Really looked. Because now, this wasn't just about my marriage. This was about something bigger. Control. Trust. Truth. And the quiet realization that the person I thought I knew had been planning something behind my back. For how long, I didn't even know. But I was going to find out, and this time, I wouldn't be the one caught off guard. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every small sound in the house. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the clock, the occasional car passing outside. Every noise felt louder because I was waiting for the front door, waiting for him. Michael came home just after midnight. I heard the key turn, slow, careful, like he didn't want to wake me. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, to listen. His footsteps moved through the house, measured, calm, too calm. That same controlled energy he had at breakfast. He paused in the hallway, right outside the bedroom. I felt it, that moment where he stood there, deciding something. Then the door opened, quietly. I kept my breathing even, steady. He walked in, set something down, probably his jacket. Then he stood there for a second, looking at me. I could feel it, that weight, that silence. Then finally, he moved, got into bed, turned away from me. No words, no questions, nothing. And somehow, that silence said more than anything he could have said. He knew something had shifted, maybe not everything, but enough. The next morning, I got up before him, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, same place as yesterday. But I wasn't the same person sitting there. I had Daniel's plan in my head. The messages burned into my memory. And one clear goal: stay ahead. Michael walked in 10 minutes later, like nothing had happened, like yesterday didn't exist. "Morning," he said casually. I looked up, met his eyes. "Morning." He poured himself coffee, sat across from me. Same routine, same posture, but the air between us, different, tighter, more aware. He studied my face. "You sleep okay?" he asked. A simple question. Normal, harmless. "No," I said. I didn't soften it, didn't pretend. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, me neither," he said. That almost made me laugh, because I didn't believe him. Not really. Michael didn't lose sleep. He adjusted. He planned. He moved forward. "You've been thinking," he said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes," I replied. Silence. Then, "About yesterday?" he asked. I held his gaze. "About everything." That made him pause, just slightly, but I saw it. That crack again. That moment where he recalculated. "I told you," he said, leaning back slightly, "you're overreacting." There it was. The narrative. The one he wanted. The one he needed. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "I'm paying attention." His jaw tightened. Just for a second. "You always trusted me before," he said. That word. Trusted. He was using it, trying to pull me back. I didn't take it. "I also didn't know everything before," I said. That hit. I saw it. Clear. "What does that mean?" he asked. I leaned forward slightly, just enough to change the energy. It means I'm asking questions now, I said. His eyes narrowed. What questions? I didn't answer right away, because this moment mattered. Every word mattered. Why the rush, I asked. He frowned. What rush? The documents, I said. The pressure. The timing. He exhaled slowly, like he was tired of explaining something simple. It's business, Ruth, he said. Timing matters. I nodded. Then why didn't you explain it properly? I asked. His tone sharpened slightly. I did. No, I said calmly. You didn't. Silence. Then, you're letting that lawyer get in your head, he said. There it was. Shift the blame. Discredit the support. Make me doubt my own judgment. I didn't react. I'm letting facts get in my head, I said. That stopped him, for a second. Then he leaned forward. Facts, he repeated. Yes. I held his gaze, unmoving, unwavering, and something in that moment changed again. Because for the first time, he realized I wasn't backing down. Not emotionally, not logically, not at all. What facts, he asked quietly. That question. That was the line, the edge. I could cross it, expose everything I knew, or I could hold it, stay one step ahead. Daniel's voice echoed in my mind. He doesn't know yet. That's power. I leaned back, took a slow sip of coffee, then met his eyes again. The kind that don't match what you told me, I said. His expression hardened. You're being vague, he said. I'm being careful, I replied. Another pause. Longer this time. He studied me, really studied me, trying to figure out what I knew, how much I knew. And for the first time, he couldn't read me. That was new. For both of us. Ruth, he said slowly, if you've got something to say, just say it. I shook my head slightly. Not yet, I said. That hit harder than anything else, because it told him everything he needed to know. That I knew something, that I wasn't reacting blindly, that I was choosing my moment. His jaw tightened again. You're making this worse, he said. No, I replied quietly. You already did that. Silence. Heavy. Real. Then he stood up. Abrupt. Frustrated. I don't have time for this, he said. I didn't move. Neither do I replied. He grabbed his keys, his phone, then paused, just for a second, because his phone was already in his hand. But I saw it, that flicker, that moment where he checked, mentally, physically, making sure everything was where it should be, where he thought it was. And in that moment, I knew something else. He hadn't realized yet. Not about the messages, not about what I had seen, but he was close, close enough to feel something was off. This conversation isn't over, he said. I nodded slightly. I know. He left. The door closed, and the house went quiet again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like the calm before something bigger. I picked up my phone, texted Daniel. He's starting to suspect. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then his reply. Good. That means we're still ahead. I looked around the house, at everything we had built, at everything that now felt uncertain. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of what was coming. I felt ready for it. By the afternoon, everything changed. Not slowly, not subtly, all at once. It started with a call from Daniel. Ruth, he said, his voice sharper than usual. I need you to sit down. I was already sitting, but the way he said it made my chest tighten. I'm listening, I said. There's been movement, he continued. My stomach dropped. What kind of movement, I asked. A large transfer attempt, he said, from a joint account. My grip tightened around the phone. Attempt, I repeated. Yes, he said. It didn't go through. Relief hit first. Fast. Sharp. Why not? I asked. Because we flagged it this morning, he said. I closed my eyes for a second. Daniel had moved faster than I realized. Faster than Michael expected. How much, I asked quietly. There was a pause. Enough to matter, he said. That told me everything. This wasn't a test. This wasn't a minor move. This was the move. The one they had been planning. And it was him, I asked. Yes, Daniel said. Authorized through his credentials. My heart started pounding. Not from fear, from clarity. Because now, there was no more doubt. No more ambiguity. Michael wasn't just considering something. He was doing it. Is Angela involved? I asked. Yes, Daniel said. The receiving account is linked to her firm. That was it. That was the confirmation. Everything I suspected, everything I feared. Real, documented, undeniable. What happens now? I asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. Now we act. Something in his tone shifted, stronger, more decisive. We have enough to formally intervene, he said. Intervene. The word felt powerful, controlled, strategic. And Michael? I asked. He's going to realize the transfer failed, Daniel said, if he hasn't already. I nodded slowly. He'll come home, I said. Yes, Daniel replied. And when he does, he won't be calm. That part I already knew. Good, I said quietly. Daniel paused. You're ready, he asked. I looked around the house, at the life I had built, at the man I had trusted, at everything that had quietly been shifting beneath my feet. Yes, I said. I'm ready. We ended the call, and I sat there for a moment, just breathing. Because this was it. The moment everything came to the surface. No more guessing, no more waiting, just truth. Michael came home earlier than usual. The door opened harder this time. Not careful, not quiet. He walked in fast, sharp, controlled anger. I stayed in the living room, waiting. He didn't even take off his jacket. Ruth, he said, not warm, not calm, just my name. I stood up slowly. I'm here, I said. He stared at me, long, hard. Did you do something? He asked. There it was. No pretending, no soft entry. Straight to it. I met his gaze. Yes, I said. That answer landed. Heavy. Immediate. His expression darkened. What did you do? He asked. I didn't move, didn't step back, didn't soften. I protected myself, I said. His jaw clenched. You blocked a transfer, he said. Not a question. A statement. Yes. Silence. Thick. Explosive. That was business, he snapped. No, I said calmly. That was our money. Our, not his, not hers. Ours. You don't understand what you just did, he said. I tilted my head slightly. Then explain it, I replied. That threw him. Just for a second, because he wasn't expecting that. He was expecting emotion, fear, confusion, not control, not clarity. You interfered, he said. I stopped something you didn't tell me about, I said. His voice rose slightly. I told you enough, because he wasn't expecting that. He was expecting emotion, fear, confusion, not control, not clarity. You interfered, he said. I stopped something you didn't tell me about, I said. His voice rose slightly. I told you enough. No, I said, you didn't. We stood there, facing each other. No more distance, no more illusions, just truth. Why her? I asked. That question, that one shifted everything. His expression flickered. Just enough. What he said. Why Angela? I asked. Silence. Then, it's not like that, he said. I almost smiled, because that line, that was instinct, not truth. Then what is it like? I asked. He looked away, for the first time. Away? That told me more than anything. It's business, he said again, but weaker this time, less certain. I stepped closer. Just one step. Then why did you tell her to handle your wife? I asked quietly. That hit hard. His head snapped back toward me. What? He said. I held his gaze. Steady, unflinching. I saw the messages, I said. Silence. Total. Absolute. And in that silence, everything changed. Because now, he knew. All of it. Every calculation. Every hidden move. Exposed. You went through my phone, he said. Not denial. Not explanation. That. I nodded slowly. Yes. His face hardened. You had no right. I had every right. I cut in. My voice didn't rise, but it landed. Firm. Unshakable. You asked me to sign something that could have taken everything from me, I said. You involved someone else. You planned this. He shook his head. You're twisting it, he said. No, I replied. I'm seeing it. That difference. He couldn't fight that. Not anymore. Ruth, he said softer. Now you don't understand the pressure I'm under. There it was. The shift. From control to justification. I didn't move. Then help me understand, I said. He exhaled, ran a hand through his hair. For a moment, he looked tired. Not angry, not calculated, just tired. And that almost made it worse. Things weren't stable, he said. I needed to secure assets. By hiding it from me, I asked. I was going to tell you, he said quickly. When? I asked. He didn't answer, because there was no answer. And Angela, I pressed. He hesitated. She has connections, he said. That's not what I asked. Silence. Then finally, it got complicated, he said. Complicated. That word again. Always vague. Always safe. But not anymore. How long? I asked. He looked at me, really looked, and this time, he didn't lie. A few months, he said. My chest tightened, but I didn't break, because now I had something stronger than emotion. I had truth. And the transfer? I asked. It was temporary, he said. I shook my head. No, I said. It wasn't. He opened his mouth, then stopped, because he knew. He knew I had seen enough. He knew I understood. There was no more controlling the story. No more rewriting it. Just reality. We stood there. Two people in the same house, but no longer in the same truth. And for the first time, Michael looked uncertain. Not angry, not confident, uncertain. And that's when I knew the balance had shifted completely. That night, we didn't speak. Not after everything had been said, not after everything had been exposed. Michael stayed in his office, door closed, lights on, like he was trying to hold on to something. Control, time, maybe even the version of our life that no longer existed. I stayed in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, not crying, not breaking, just thinking. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to him. I was deciding for myself. And that felt unfamiliar, but also strangely calm. The next morning, I woke up early again. But this time, I already knew what I was going to do. No hesitation, no second guessing. I got dressed. Simple, clean, intentional. Then I picked up my phone, called Daniel. I'm ready, I said. His voice was steady. Good, he replied. Come in. We'll finalize everything. Everything. That word didn't scare me anymore. It grounded me, because everything now meant clarity, not confusion. By the time I walked into Daniel's office, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Certain. He stood up when I entered, gave me a small nod. No pity, no dramatics, just respect. Well, keep this clean, he said. I nodded. That's all I want. We went over the documents, every line, every clause, everything Michael had tried to rush me through. Now there was no rush, only understanding, only choice. You're protecting your assets, Daniel explained. Your accounts, your share of the house and future liabilities. I listened, absorbed it, because this wasn't just legal, it was personal. Every sentence was a boundary. Every signature was a decision. "Once we file," Daniel said, "there's no undoing it." I met his eyes. "I know." And I meant it, because what I was undoing wasn't just paperwork. It was a version of my life, one built on trust that no longer existed. "I'll handle the filing," he said. I took a breath, then nodded. "Do it." And just like that, it began. Not the end, the beginning of something new. When I got home, Michael was waiting, sitting at the kitchen table, the same table, where everything had started to fall apart. He looked up when I walked in, studied my face. "You went somewhere," he said. Not a question. "No," I said calmly. I went forward. He didn't like that. I saw it. "You filed something," he said. He already knew. Of course he did. "Yes." Silence. "Then you're really doing this," he said. I nodded. Yes. His shoulders dropped slightly, not in defeat, in realization. "This didn't have to happen," he said. I looked at him, really looked, at the man I had loved, trusted, built a life with. "You're right," I said. That surprised him. It didn't. Silence. Then, "You could have talked to me," he said. That one almost made me laugh, but I didn't. "You had months to talk to me," I said quietly. "You chose not to." He looked away, because he knew. There was no argument left, no version of the story that worked anymore. "Ruth," he said softer now, not defensive, not sharp, just human. "I messed up." That was the first honest thing he had said, the first real thing, and it came too late. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. He swallowed. "I didn't think it would go this far," he admitted. I tilted my head slightly. Neither did I. Silence. Long. Heavy. But different now. Not tense. Not explosive. Just real. "What happens now?" he asked. That question. It mattered. Because for the first time, he wasn't controlling the direction. I was. "We separate things," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "We move forward, independently." He nodded slowly, like he was trying to accept it, even if he didn't want to. "And us?" he asked. I held his gaze, and for a moment I felt everything. The years, the memories, the love that had been real once, and the betrayal that had replaced it. "There is no us right now," I said gently. Not harsh, not cruel, just true. That landed, deeper than anything else, because it wasn't anger, it was clarity. He leaned back in his chair, ran his hand over his face, exhausted. "I never thought you'd be the one to walk away," he said. I gave a small, sad smile. "I never thought I'd have to." Silence again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was final. "I'm sorry," he said. And for the first time, I believed him. Not because it fixed anything, but because it sounded real. "I know," I said, And that was enough. Not forgiveness, not closure, but enough to move on. Later that afternoon, I sat by the window, a cup of tea in my hands, looking out at the street. The same street, the same house. But everything felt different, lighter, clearer, like a weight I didn't fully understand before had been lifted. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Filing confirmed. 3 simple words, but they meant everything. I closed my eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and let it out slowly. Because this time, I wasn't holding anything in. I wasn't waiting for permission. I wasn't trusting blindly. I was choosing myself, my future, my peace. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. After everything I went through, I realized something I wish I had understood years earlier. Trust is not proven by words. It's proven by transparency. If someone truly respects you, they don't rush you into decisions you don't understand. They don't hide things and call it protection. And they definitely don't involve others behind your back while asking for your trust. I used to believe that loyalty meant staying quiet, being patient, and giving the benefit of the doubt. But loyalty without boundaries isn't love, it's vulnerability. What I learned is this: you can love deeply and still choose yourself. You can build a life with someone and still walk away when that foundation cracks. And most importantly, protecting yourself is not betrayal, it's self-respect. If you've ever been in a situation where something didn't feel right, listen to that feeling. Ask questions. Take your time. You are allowed to understand what you're signing both on paper and in life. And if you've ever had to choose yourself the hard way, I see you. Tell me, have you ever ignored your instincts and regretted it, or trusted them and changed your life? I'd really like to hear your story. Comment below and let's talk. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. You're not alone in this.